In this episode of The Growth Engine, I'm joined by Shakeela Williamson, a strategic, award-winning marketing leader with over 20 years of experience driving growth, digital transformation, and brand strategy within financial services and fintech. Most recently, Shakeela served as Senior Vice President of Marketing at Citi Consumer Bank, leading marketing for high net worth individuals, wealth management, and banking. Prior to that, she held key leadership roles at Money Corp, Domestic and General, and major fintech brands, delivering exceptional growth, acquisition, and transformation initiatives. Today, we'll explore how marketing can be positioned as a growth engine, how Shakeela has driven significant revenue impact through marketing strategy, and how marketing leaders can gain influence in the C-suite. Shakeela, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Shakeela, your career spans fintech, global payments, banking, and insurance. Where did marketing come into it?
It's an interesting one because I never intended to do marketing. It just happened. And so if I take you back to when I studied at university, I did international business with Portuguese.
Right.
So very different to marketing. But the international business element actually had marketing as part of that, but it was more theoretical and it was just part of the module. But I just really loved languages and business, so I combined it. But I didn't know at the time what I wanted to do. So when I left university, I had a few years doing a few temp jobs. But then I started working at this digital agency.
Right.
And that's when I was so passionate about what you could do. It was when the kind of dot-com burst was happening, and there was a lot of websites needing to be developed.
Yeah.
I was looking after their core clients, and I was exposed to all of the web design and web development, so usability, accessibility, SEO, all of the digital strategies, and I loved it because it was really fast moving as well, having to keep up to date for the clients. So, and then from there I moved to my role at Domestic and General, and that was an entry level e-commerce kind of assistant or coordinator, and from there I was doing the similar things. It was still web development and looking after clients again as well, but in that role I progressed more to the leading the digital marketing as we advanced, and that was for their own website, so direct to consumer, but also for our clients as well. And I had a real passion there because I really started doing A/B testing. I set up A/B testing for them, and I was so passionate about what you could do and seeing the results and seeing how you could improve and your growth. From there, that was where I was really passionate about it. And then I applied for the job at Money Corp, and they were on a huge transformation there, and it was e-commerce manager that I started at there. Again, it was very much I came in to help transform their digital marketing, and they were also on a huge journey to digitize their onboarding process. So again, it was still very much digital, but I was still having to show growth. So it was more on the growth side there. And then I eventually headed up digital marketing from promotion I had from some of the successes that I achieved. So still very much digital, and I work very closely with the rest of the marketing guys, like in terms of brand. And from there, I got headhunted for the role at Citi. And that's where my role has been more broader. So it covers the whole marketing spectrum. So at a CMO level, really, leading their marketing. So It started as digital marketing, and then more generic marketing.
I'm interested because you've obviously been agency side and client side. What are the differences between being a marketer and one versus the other?
I think with it being at an agency, I think you get the chance to really learn so much, and you're exposed to all the different tools and all of the different platforms that you can work with. And my experience of working at the agency that I did, I just felt like I learned so much more. And I think that really did key me up to working client side and then dealing with agencies, because I was then able to know how to handle that, what I knew my staff. If I could say that. But from a client perspective and marketing, I think very much you just need to keep up to date with it.
The pace of marketing and the volume of knowledge that you need to have, I think, as a senior role within marketing is just ever increasing. How do you manage that?
I have subscribed to so many newsletters and I'm constantly reading articles, whether that's on LinkedIn and just lots of subscriptions to things that I'm really interested in. But I think it's really important to upskill, especially times like now with AI in marketing. You need to know what's going on and how it can help you. So I've been doing an AI course in marketing. Um, but yeah, it's just something that I think is really important to stay up to date with. So like how you can improve things, how can you
Yeah,
improve your strategies. Without that, without being out there in the training, you won't know what you can do,
no.
what's possible.
Well, we're gonna talk more about some of the training later on in the discussion. I know that you're a big fan of continuous learning, and you've done some great successes with that. So let's park that for now and come back to that. Um, Something that you just spoke about, that you talked about, that your role at Money Corp was about driving growth. This podcast is all about marketing as a growth driver within business, and that's something that we're very passionate about here. At your time at Citi, you doubled acquisition rates there. Can you expand on how you achieved that?
The drivers behind that was really understanding what was possible, and I did the research, looked at the data. So when I came in, it was very much they were on a big journey at Citi again to transform, and they really wanted to accelerate on their acquisition. So I just looked at everything, really understood what they were doing and where they needed to go. So in terms of strategy, it was like doing the research and understanding what worked, what has worked in the past, what we need to do to change, and really understanding the ideal customer profile. Who they are, who's the target audience, and what what are their pain points and what motivates them, so we could actually ensure that was in the messaging and the value proposition. So that was really key from a strategic perspective to start from scratch there. And then from an execution perspective, I looked at the channels and how we could reach the high net worth audience that they were. So it was about optimizing those and actually bringing in new channels where we could. And the biggest thing was really is measurement and tracking. I had to completely overhaul that. There was a lot
Right,
missing.
right,
So
right.
without that, you don't know what's working and what needs to change. So from that, I was able to track at an audience level from from a targeting perspective. In LinkedIn, you can target so many different categories, and I was able to target at that level, so I could see what was working. So that was really quite fundamental.
Yeah, yeah. That. And it's a similar Money Corp.
At Moneycorp, the drivers there were really about the automation. I came in and they were on a huge journey again, and I was leading the change in terms of automating their whole onboarding platform.
Okay.
So that was a huge project across the whole business, and that significant results from that as well, doubling conversions. And so it was really the automation there, but I also had to look at the different marketing channels they were using
Right.
and optimizing those. I also did an agency review there. There were some issues there, and I needed to make sure that they were that things changed there,
Yeah.
whether that was bringing in new agencies or talking to them about how we can improve. So that they were the really big things there as well at Money Corp.
Well, how long were you at Money Corp for?
Money Corp, it was nearly about 5 or 6 years.
Right, right. And again, going through huge transitions.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Money Corp, private equity backed, high growth, high targets. There
Yeah,
was We needed to make sure that we were
yeah,
delivering,
yeah.
and so it was keeping up to date with what can we do, where's the revenue, what are you focusing on. So it was, you
Great
know
fun if it's all going in the right direction. Enormous pressure, I imagine, if it's not.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I had to look after was a negative forming channel, and I
Mm.
had to turn that around.
Okay.
And that was referrals actually, which was one of their biggest channels from a revenue generation perspective.
Right.
So turning that around was really an amazing achievement.
Yeah.
And that was again just looking at how we can promote it, what were the areas that were suffering in terms of promotion. and tracking again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Missing tracking, so you don't know what's working, what's not. So it's such a big fundamental area.
That's interesting. Obviously, I'm not going to ask for sensitive information here. I'm just interested in understanding the process more than anything.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I'm sure that this is an area that people need to solve in their own businesses or organizations. So underperforming channel.
Yeah,
First thing, presumably, is that you have to diagnose what's going wrong.
yeah, of course. Yeah,
From what you're saying, if you don't straight away, if number one is we haven't got accurate measuring, it makes the diagnosis that much more challenging.
yeah.
So in your case, you didn't have the right measuring. So how do you actually start diagnosing, or is that
Yeah,
one of the problems?
there was still ways of knowing it came from that channel, but I'm
Right.
talking more at the, what I had to do a deep dive of where the tracking was not perfect.
Yeah.
It might have been going to a different allocated to a different channel, for example.
Okay.
So it was still possible to track revenue from that. There were
Right.
certain codes that we were using at the time. So, but yeah, the overhaul was really diagnosing everything. Why is that not working? It should be better. So getting to the bottom of that.
In more general terms, when you're diagnosing issues that need solving, the role of research within that, it sounds like that's something that you've implemented at Citi, about making sure that you're really diving into understanding
Yeah, absolutely. Without research and data analysis, you really don't know where you need to go.
Yeah,
So it's so important. Actually seeing what has worked, what needs to be done, really. So it's a big thing. I
yeah.
would say that without that, you will struggle.
And in both Money Corp and Citi, did that research exist, or did you have to go in? Did you have to start conducting that? Do you have to get your own proprietary
Yeah.
research data?
So at Money Corp, there were big focus groups and things that happen there.
Okay.
But I'm talking more looking at the data, as well, like what
Mm,
I can see, from the analytics
yeah.
and just seeing what's working there and actually having discussions with people in the business as well. What are they seeing? Where are the issues? And actually
Drilling
really
down
getting,
into that
yeah,
data.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then Citi pretty much used the data that was already available, but they had done past focus groups as well. So, but
Right.
there's never you can never do enough research. I think
Yeah.
that's something that I would always say, that research is so important to
Yeah.
keep in touch with what the customer actually wants and where you can actually delight them.
Let's go back to the kind of broad subject of this podcast. So, marketing acting as a growth driver within businesses. Um, we've had an initial conversation around the subject, but let's rewind on that. The marketing is often undervalued in its potential of being a growth driver within the business. Um, how can CMOs get a better seat at the table to actually have a voice in the
Yeah.
direction of the business?
So one thing I say there is it's a bit of a hot topic at the moment. There's a lot of data out there about the CMO tenure being the shortest in the
Out of all the
C-suite.
C-suite, yeah,
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 about 3 or 4 years,
yeah.
which is like really
Shocking when you
crazy
compare that to
to a
CEO and
CFO.
CFO.
Yeah,
Yeah,
CEO. So it's a movement that needs to change. So I'm part of this group that a colleague has set up called the Marketing Revolution,
right.
and it is about the change that needed in marketing, because I think it's a lack of understanding, like what does marketing actually do? So I think as marketing leaders, it's really important to bring marketing back to where it should be. It should be
Yeah,
the core of a business,
yeah.
because we speak to the customers. We then bring that information back into the organization and actually develop strategies from that. So
Mm-hmm.
without that, without marketing actually doing that and actually being that central role, I think I don't know how companies are growing.
No.
How are they doing it? So really important to make sure that the education's there. What is marketing, and to gain that influence?
Do you think that some of this is a fault of our own making? I'm referring here to the disparaging term, the colouring in department, shall we say? You've obviously heard that phrase.
I have heard that.
And that was, to me, it was like, well, that's a disparaging term,
Yeah,
and you wouldn't ever hear that if you're working with the CEOs talking about CFO, or it's like with this strategy growth for the business, why is it that marketing isn't thought of in that same way?
Yeah.
And that was my question. Have we brought it on ourselves as an industry? What needs to change in order to
Yeah.
have that seat?
So I think it's about influence, so you need to gain that influence, and that influence comes from building relationships
Mm,
with your peers, with the C-suite, with your team. And one of the things that I heard more recently was about decisions being made before the boardroom. So again, that's another thing, isn't
yeah,
it? Like, how are you going to get that investment if you haven't actually built influence in the company?
I see. Yeah,
So I would 100% say that to build influence, there's many ways that you can do that, and I'm doing some training on that as well, like to actually really enhance those skills as well. So the first thing would be about communication. So you would have heard about the different colors that like red, yellow, green, and blue. So it's a disc profile. So
right.
depending on that, then you would adjust your communication style and behavior based on that. So that's
Okay.
one thing about becoming aligned with that person, so how to. So the CEO might be really driven with data, and you need to then be on the same page there.
So improving your empathetic skills, is that the right?
Yeah, but also, yeah, understanding, yeah, exactly, but
Yeah,
also how do they behave, what do they want to receive when they're wanting to kind of download on what you're doing. Do they want
right.
it in
Yeah,
bullets? Do they want explanations?
yeah.
So that's one thing. And then there's also building credibility, so we need to really get to the grips of what the market is, what's happening in the market,
Mm.
what are customers wanting, what do they, what's driving them. So then bringing that knowledge back into the company and actually
The
saying,
becoming the expert voice of the
exactly,
customer.
exactly,
Yeah,
absolutely key. So then you need to bring that into the company and show that you're that person.
yeah,
Credibility there, credibility understanding the product. How many people really, really do understand, the real details of the product, like the margin, the P&L? So you become that person that actually can talk the same language as them,
yeah.
and actually how marketing can influence that. And then the other thing is like training and ensuring that you're developing yourself, that or everything that's happening, like the market.
Mm.
So all of that will build influence, which is really important. And then hopefully you will get that seat at the table
Right,
from that.
interesting. Again, this is a repetition of something that we've said, but because the space is changing so quickly, the
Yeah.
volume of new technology coming into the well, in all areas of life. But when I see the diagram of Martech, different types of brand, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
where on earth do you start? And I think if you're not one of these individuals that is a naturally curious person, you're probably going to struggle
Yeah.
rising through the ranks. I would guess.
I think absolutely in marketing, digital, you need to keep up to date with
Yeah,
what's going on. And that's why I go to webinars, I go to networking events and really understand, what are people using? What are
yeah.
the big use cases of those? So it's actually good to see what other people are doing and how they're using those tools.
Yeah, let's talk about one of the courses. So you currently doing, or you recently finished the influential marketer course?
I'm still doing that at the
Okay.
moment. So that's where, to sum it up, is what I was saying about building credibility
Yeah.
and, with your peers. But there's so much to cover in that.
Mm,
But summing it up is that you need to build that, you need to gain that influence to be able to get that seat at the table.
yeah.
I think it's fundamental to actually be that revolution and be that pivot to get marketing more recognized.
Yeah. Where is that? Is that online course? Is it?
It's online through
Yeah.
someone I met through a networking event, actually.
Oh,
She's running
fantastic.
it, and she's also doing the marketing revolution. And it's a community of marketers
Right.
basically that are having the same problem, or actually recognize the challenge and actually want to change
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
So it's about taking that movement to
Yeah.
actually make marketing where it should be.
So it's almost a place where other marketers can come and talk to other marketers and share
But actually
problems,
more
war
for
stories.
making change rather than just talking about it. So
Okay.
actually coming with your problem, like the CFO won't approve my brand budget, for example,
Yeah.
or this has only just started really recently, but I'm
Mm.
a big advocate of that as well. Like, it's actually this is a problem that needs to be fixed,
Yeah.
and I think the more that marketers actually are aware of that as well, that's how it can change and make that movement, and
Yeah.
actually just being upskilled in what you need to say to the CFO, what you need to
Yeah.
say to the CEO.
Part of it, I guess, is knowing exactly like you say, knowing what the conversation should be,
Yeah,
in order to be able to have an opinion on them. And
exactly. And with the upskilling thing that you mentioned as well, but being more confident in what you're saying and actually what you've seen, what you've heard, and there's a lot of studies out there using that information and actually validating why marketing is so important,
yeah,
why brand spending money on brand is so important. And it's not just the cost. And the other thing about the the marketing being the colouring department, it's also the fact that it's a cost center rather than a growth driver.
yeah,
That needs to change. Marketing is growth, and it should be seen as that.
that particular point of around marketing being seen not as a cost center.
Yes.
um is there stuff that you do with, whether that was at Money Corp or at Citi, of when you're presenting budgets that
Hmm.
you're requesting in order to achieve your objectives for the year, are there tools or measurements that you use to start showing that you have to
Yeah,
present
I
in?
mean, what I would say is that brand tracking is really important. Like, what is the sentiment out there for your brands? And you can do surveys, that which is what we did at Citi. But it's really important to understand unaided awareness, and how do people know you? So that's the most simple brand tracking.
Right.
But there will also be search impressions.
Yeah.
What are they? From Moneycorp perspective, I would say that would be what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Who knows about us, and how can we improve that? So there's various metrics to measure that.
What are the biggest challenges when you come into a large organization like City, for example, when you've actually, your task is to start transforming the
Yeah,
way that they doing their
yeah.
existing marketing?
Hmm.
How do you go about
Well, I
that?
think I obviously had to do that myself, but it was when it's a larger corporation, there's going to be less agility. So you're going to have to work with the tools that are there, unless, of course, they're on a big mission to change. And when I was there was that big mission to change, bringing in lots of new martech. And so that it has to be something that's got the buy-in. So again, if you want to do something that they're not doing, you would have to make that business case. So
Yeah.
again, it's like learning those influential skills. How can I actually influence people that this is a really good idea? So I think that's really important. So it can happen, but it might take a bit longer, like
Yeah.
in terms of transformation. But then at a fintech, it's very agile, that you can bring in pretty much what you want.
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
I was there, I actually brought in some tools for A/B testing, for example, and that was like just done overnight
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
few days. So it's really easy
And
to implement.
that sort of speed of getting buy-in versus having to fill out multiple rounds for the, I guess, the security teams to pass new
Yeah,
software.
absolutely. There
They're
is.
different beasts, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been, because I've had fintech and the large corporations, I know that it's different, but
Yeah.
it's worth it, to push forward, to make sure that you can still see that growth. It's just a
Yes.
different processes.
We're hopping back and forth here between City
Yeah.
and Money Corp. But one of the things I'm interested in is, you mentioned in time at Money Corp that you put in place a big SEO and digital transformation project.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I joined there, that they were on a transformation anyway to actually digitize everything. So
Right.
this was their onboarding platform for new accounts and then for them to trade. So imagine everything being manual and then suddenly having to automate all of that. So it's really, really big, leading all of that. But it was absolutely amazing once it went live, and the impact it had in terms of it doubling conversions. So I got recognized for outstanding achievement from the CEO as well, like an award that you
Oh,
get for
fabulous.
an annual ceremony for all staff. And that
Right.
was out of, like, at the time, maybe 500, 500 or 600 people.
Wow.
So I was like quite impressed with that award.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think the biggest thing is really understanding the friction points of a journey, of the customer journey, and using data and analytics is absolutely key.
Yeah.
Where are the drop-offs? What do we need to improve? This was quite a big transformation, so it was only going to get better, because going from manual and a designed form that was just not
Mm.
working, and actually completely redesigning everything. And then the other thing was around the channels that we were using, optimizing those. Um, Really just looking at what's working, what's not, the agencies that were involved as well, and
Mm.
actually changing a lot of that. So one of the other things was that I thought was actually quite important is the conversion side as well, the optimization. So you've got the onboarding journey, but before that, you've got the landing pages. So
Yeah.
they weren't converting either. So it was actually a complete redesign of those. And I designed a best practice landing page that included all like trust signals and stuff. So that
Right.
how important that is. And that really helped as well. And I saw a massive increase there. So
So you almost created a template for the
yeah,
business to follow, and
yeah, then we
then
used it, rolled
yeah,
it out to these different channels as well, because there were
yeah,
partnerships, there was direct. So making sure that that was used as the touch point, and that really did improve
right,
things. So we had that conversion, and then a better platform. You're
yeah,
gonna, you're winning really.
yeah.
So I think that was really important, conversion optimization at that time.
Presumably within SEO, what you're tracking there is that you're tracking the volume of organic
Yeah,
visitors, time spent on site.
yeah,
Those are the key ones. Anything else?
referrals like
Right.
being referred as well. So referral traffic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there was a huge transformation there in terms of ensuring that we were doing it properly,
Mm.
so and actually creating content as well.
Yeah.
That was quite big as well.
Yeah. Presumably the right type of inbound traffic, which
Yes.
so it's the content is almost the fishing hooks to
Yeah.
catch the right type of fish, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there was a lot that we did there, and making sure that we were tracking the right keywords as well, and
Yeah.
actually doing analysis of what that should be, and yeah, bringing in the right agency for that as well.
So, was it Money Corp that you had a refresh of the agency roster?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
how does that happen? So, we obviously are an agency, so I've never understood from that side. But
Yeah.
there's what presumably there's either a reason to instigate that with maybe too many legacy agencies on the books, or things move on and we haven't got the right types of agency. But
Yeah.
how does it happen from a
My job when as soon as I joined was like, I've got to redesign the website, and nobody knew anything about it, so I had to do a lot of investigation with who
right?
was doing what, who's actually making changes to the website. So where I come from at Domestic in General, I knew everything, and I actually had all the teams were internal, so it was much easier. But there, like, it
Yeah,
was all like really fragmented, and also I needed to make things happen very quickly, and the website people were just not, it was too slow, so
right.
I changed that, and I
Yeah,
got the right team that had the right experience, and that was just putting that out to tender,
yeah.
and
Okay.
I got the best agency, like they turned things around really quickly. And then there was also um yeah, from the paid side, paid like in terms of digital marketing, I just didn't, because I'd come from an environment where I knew what was working and what wasn't. I didn't really see the work that they were doing that was
Didn't have the
valuable. I
confidence
didn't have the
almost.
confidence,
Yeah,
and I brought in an agency that I was using before,
yeah.
and I had that confidence. So, and I think that's, when you have to move really quickly, you need to trust
You got to
the
have trusted
agency.
partners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but I also think that's, if I can build that trust with the agencies that we're working with, but I couldn't. I just
No.
didn't feel like they knew what they were doing,
Mm.
and because I knew what I was doing, I
Yeah.
knew that they didn't know
And
that.
and ultimately, it's resting on you, isn't it? The
Yeah, I'm
performance
in
is
charge of it. Yeah,
yeah,
so for me, I knew that things had to change quickly, so I had to make those decisions and
yeah,
actually get a new agency, and we saw huge improvements from having a new agency.
yeah.
I do think it's important for that relationship to make sure that you are building that trust between you both as
Mm.
well, because agencies, I'm not saying this is all of them, can also rest on their laurels. They
Yeah,
don't try as hard. So when they're new, they like really try. So it
yeah,
might be the case of that
yeah,
they didn't need to impress as much towards the relationship, because they'd been there for quite a few years
yeah.
already.
Got
So
got taken their foot off the gas. So
yeah,
yeah.
but maybe the smaller agencies don't do that.
Mm.
And then this was a smaller one that I was going to. So
Yeah,
I actually do favor those sometimes, because you get that better client experience.
yeah.
If you go for the
Personal
really big
relationship.
ones, and I have to say, like, I've worked with so many agencies at Domestic in General too, and We went through so many different digital agencies that weren't performing because
No.
they were so big.
Let's jump out back to a kind of broader subject in marketing and talk about uh, the importance of the customer.
Yeah,
Customer centric marketing, shall we say? Um, Within financial services, fintech, wealth management, all areas that you've
yeah,
been in, customer expectations vary quite a bit.
of course, yeah.
What is your way that you've kind of, well, what have you learned through navigating through different subsectors within the FS
Yeah.
space?
You never definitely know what they're thinking, so you have to make sure that you're doing ongoing research to
Mm,
understand what they want. And it will always vary depending on the product and the company. So for example, Moneycorp's fintech, very digital, so
yeah.
you have to have a really good digital platform, and it was payments. So really just understanding that what are their pain points and making sure you're keeping in touch with that. But yeah, it will just really depend on the product, really, and
So,
what your company is
if
on their expectations.
so, if we think at City, it was
Yeah,
I guess much more focused on high net worth
yeah,
individuals.
absolutely, and wealth management as well.
Yeah,
So large transactions, when it's wealth management, it's Citi was very much relationship manager based. So
right.
you have those discussions. But there might be also products like you might want to change your card details or do a quick FX transaction and payment. You will do that digitally or on the app.
Yeah,
So it's about making sure that you understand what the customer wants and you provide that.
yeah.
So there was both there. And at MoneyCorp, actually, for example, one of our target customers was high net worth too.
Oh, right. Okay.
So they were doing, like if you're buying a property abroad, that was one of our biggest use cases, that we want
Right.
more of that. And they are doing a huge transaction there. They want to talk to someone rather than
Mm.
doing that online. So you had to
From a
cater for both.
security point of view,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So I think it really it really depends on the company, the product,
yeah.
and
There
what
is
you're.
no one size
No,
fits all. It's
absolutely
just,
no one size fits all. You need to know what they want, and you adjust to the target audience, and make sure that you've got the tools that they want
yeah.
to work with you. If it's a chatbot, if it's an app, if it's an online platform,
Mm-mm.
provide that and actually make sure it's what they want.
Very early in our days, one of our first clients was actually Jaguar Land Rover,
Oh, really?
and they we worked for a chap who headed up their market research team, and he was a huge advocate of ethnographic research and
Yes, ethnographic research. Yeah,
doing ethnographic
yeah,
documentary films. And
yeah.
that was my first kind of understanding of how important market research is
Research.
in the development of, and they were doing research for car products that were coming out sort of 8, 9, 10 years later. But the voice of the customer going out,
Yeah,
meeting these individuals and
yeah.
bringing their voice into the business was fundamental to their strategy.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I've learned more recently, at one of the courses I've done, was an example with Amazon. Like one
Right,
of the Jeff Bezos, he actually had a spare seat at the boardroom and an empty seat, and that
right.
was the voice of the customer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it's basically like, or whatever we're deciding to do, what's the customer gonna say
Yeah,
about that?
yeah.
And I found that that's customer centricity at its best.
Yes, yeah.
Really, every decision that you make, what does the customer think about that? And I think that we often do think that we know what's best. You might have a hunch, like you might say, "Oh, this is going to work." You really don't know
No,
until you've like put it out there,
yeah.
And
You're making assumptions, aren't you? Which can
yeah,
get you in a lot of
it's really
trouble.
dangerous because everyone feels differently about
Yeah.
things, and also what you think is your competitor, the customer won't think that. They
No.
just see it as an alternative,
Yeah.
and it might be not what you're thinking. You think
Yes.
that you've got a specific competitor, but actually what they think is that product is the competitor
Yeah.
alternative.
That's funny. It's funny you mention Amazon because the client that I worked for at Jaguar Manager, he then moved to Amazon,
Oh,
bizarrely. He'd been in automotive for years, and then when he did finally move job, he ended up at Amazon doing market research. So
oh wow.
good joining
Yeah,
of
yeah.
stories there. Um, so other than putting the customer at the front and center, how else can FS brands start to improve the overall customer experience,
Experience, yeah.
the advocacy that
Uh-huh. Yeah.
subsequently brings. We talked a lot about referrals, so
Yeah.
it's critical to growth, isn't it? So
Yeah, absolutely.
what experience have you had in that
Yeah,
area?
so it's definitely data and understanding that and doing that regularly, not just one off,
What
when
is
you're
regularly
I said you definitely
ongoing?
need to do it when you're doing your annual strategy
Yeah,
because you need to know how the market's changed. But if you're launching something new or something's gone wrong, your data saying that people aren't buying now, we need to do some research. What's
yeah,
happening? So don't be slow on that. So like definitely research. The other thing is a smooth onboarding journey. You need to know what is, where the pain points are there. Are people dropping out? I read something recently about people not optimizing the checkout process of
right,
direct to consumer sites, but that's it. They're already there. They're,
yeah.
hot customers, and you're not actually optimizing that. So really keeping on top of the analytics as well. Um, and then I would say at a loyalty program, so if you want to build retention and advocacy, you need to have a good loyalty program.
Yeah.
So that those are the things that I think are really fundamental for to make sure you've got a good customer experience. And of course, the final one is personalization. Like how can you better communicate with the customer? So I went to a webinar, not a webinar actually, an event recently with Adobe, and some of their tools now. It's impressive that you can, depending on when the customer wants to receive emails, and it would adjust like that as well. So there's some really good tools out there now. So
When you say can adjust, it adjusts what? Sorry.
when they receive emails.
Oh, I see.
So it
Sorry.
might be that
Right.
you don't want it at night, but you want it in the morning,
Yeah.
and also adjusting the send times based on their behavior when they
Mm,
want to receive things, but also frequency.
yeah.
So I'm just talking more about personalizing that experience and relevance for them.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're listening to what they need, you know.
I can't remember where I heard this term, but reading customers' digital body language. I think it's a really nice way of explaining it. And
Yeah. So when do they respond to you?
yeah,
Do they? I saw an example recently about a campaign. I think it was like sending an SMS at 2 in the morning. I was like, oh my god, the unsubscribes would be really
yeah,
bad
yeah.
because it was IKEA or something. Like they
Right.
couldn't. Are you still awake? And it was trying to sell their mattresses. I
Wow.
was like, oh, I'd like to see the unsubscribe rates
Yeah,
after that.
yeah.
So
Goodness
it's
me.
that's a weird time to send something. So I think it's about,
That's a ballsy campaign.
yeah, but also like personalizing offers if you can as well. Like,
Right.
it's not just about personalizing, hi Shakeela.
Hmm.
It'll be more about what offers would they, be more receptive to.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think if you can do that,
Hmm.
you're onto a winner with customer experience.
And Adobe have got so that presumably they were talking about the products and services that they give you as a marketer to help you deliver that kind of service.
Yeah, their tech stack is really good.
Yeah.
It's the Adobe Experience platform, so it's
Right.
got lots of different tools in there. So
So this also creates another challenge because when you I've often seen companies come in. They have a CMO that is if it's a large organization, sometimes to bring in a tech stack
yeah,
that could be 3 years worth of work.
exactly.
Obviously not in the fintechs. We've sort of
No,
talked about that different
exactly,
speed,
exactly.
but then especially with the rate of a CMO's tenure, it could they could be gone, and then someone else comes in. They've inherited a tech stack, which may be not their preferred choice,
Yeah.
and then the organisations start using a tenth of its capabilities. So, and there's almost a rush then to bring in new stuff. So, how when you've come into an organ, you must have experienced some of
I
these
did, yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
How do you start making sure that you're maximising the capabilities of the technology that you've
I
got
think
in place?
it brings it back to what's the pain points? What are you addressing? What are you
Yeah,
trying to achieve? Is it something that you need to change the tech stack? It's not just something that you should just do.
yeah,
It's not like jumping on the bandwagon, I want to make a change. It's like is there a problem with the customer experience?
yeah.
Have we got the
Diagnose the
right,
problem
yeah,
first.
diagnose the problem, do the research, and what is your strategy first? Don't jump
Yes.
to tactics. You know, the strategy might be, okay, I need to communicate with my customers and link this into the website somehow. That will be a new platform, won't it? That you'd need to make sure that you've got the right CRM that links into, like, say, HubSpot linking to your website. If you need to improve that, then you change the tech stack. If you've got the tools there, don't just jump on that and change it. There's no point, because it's such a big project, but it has to be because you're addressing something
Yeah. Yeah.
in your new strategy. So I think it's always important to do that first.
Diagnose first. Congratulations are in order. I've done this course. I know it's a fantastic course, but it does also have a very challenging exam at the end of it.
Yes.
So you ranked number 2 globally in the mini MBA in marketing. So huge congratulations.
Thank you. Honestly, I was so overwhelmed with that. I was really, really happy to get that result.
It's a phenomenal achievement, and
Thank you.
I believe did you get a handshake
Yeah,
from Mark Ritson or a thumbs up?
online.
Yes, yeah.
He did call it out. He does a basically a top 10.
Right.
And I wasn't, so he did say you smashed it the day before, like, and said, see where you
That's got
come
to
in the
be
top 10.
that's got to be up there in proud moments in your career, isn't it?
Absolutely. By Mark Ritson, like, when I first started the course, I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous about doing a course after so long.
Yeah,
And I just loved the course. I thought it was amazing. And I
yeah,
learned so much from it. Even though I've got so much experience in marketing, I still feel like you can still learn,
yeah,
where you think you might know everything. There are still moments that you do think, actually, that's a really good way of doing it, like, so I'll do it like that. So the course was fantastic. And yeah, so coming second in that class was 94%, I think, or something. So
yeah.
I
It's
was just like,
brilliant,
and
brilliant.
it was a tough exam. It was like second guessing myself the whole time, but
Yeah.
I obviously made the right choices.
Do you find yourself still referring back to that work and thinking, okay, so now,
Yeah, all the
yeah,
time.
so, yeah,
I think it's because the way the course is designed, it's so simple.
yeah,
It's simplicity, and it's easier to digest with something simple. Can you imagine, like, going through like hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents? It wasn't done like that.
yeah,
It was an online course, but it was done in your own time, and you had extra material that
yeah,
if you wanted to read it, you can. But I think the crux of it was a presentation that he does, an online presentation, and he simplifies everything.
yeah,
So it's easy to apply. And that's
yes,
one of their positioning elements, easy to apply.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I do believe that is true, from me being able to take away what I could do from that.
Yeah, you're currently doing another course at the moment,
The influential marketer,
influential
yeah.
marketer. Have you got other things in mind that you're sort of like gearing up
I
to?
think I'm just going to continue with the AI because it's evolving so much. So
Yeah,
I'm currently doing a course on it, and I can just dip in when I want,
yeah,
like, so they do webinars and lectures all the time. And other than that, it will just be whatever new is out there that I want to learn a bit more about.
yeah. Marketing folk that are sort of just coming into that leadership position,
Yeah.
um, beyond Ritson and other
Mm.
courses, what advice would you give them about being able to fast track their career or
Yeah.
improve their knowledge? What would it be?
I think there's a lot of networking needed. If you want to progress in a company,
Yeah.
absolutely networking. And
Within the company or
yeah,
within the
within the
industry?
company, but also the industry, because
Yeah,
I'm finding that since I've been doing a lot more networking now, and I'm meeting some fantastic people, that there really is a great community out there. So I do think that is a really good way to improve your confidence as well.
yeah,
Because you can actually just get stuck when you're in a role and you've been in a role for so long. But if you can get out there and network externally, it will help you network internally as well.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest ways to progress your career, networking.
Some people who can either embrace that and go, that sounds like great fun. Some people are like, that sounds like the worst thing, because some people can find that quite
It's
intimidating.
out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
So I think when you're out of your comfort zone, it will naturally feel like that. But when you start doing it, that your comfort zone gets larger.
yeah. So just bite
Like,
the
so
bullet and get
yeah,
on with it.
exactly. So I think that's one really important thing. And in terms of coming into a company where you do need to transform as well, it's about really understanding, do your research to,
On the
what they
business,
on the
what the business
business,
does.
what they need to do
Yeah,
to get to the next level. So I think that's really important as well. And ongoing research is, yeah, as we said, that's the biggest thing, I would say.
Those skills that you've just described, do you think your career is phenomenal and you've achieved incredible results within the business that you've worked for? Do you think that those skills come naturally to you, or you've had to develop them and just, as we say, bite the bullet? And
I've had to develop them
yeah,
100%, especially the confidence, that believe in yourself.
yeah,
It's something that is everyone has that inner voice, that you can't do this. It's your imposter syndrome, but
yeah,
I think you can. You just have to put yourself out there, and it is all possible.
yeah,
And I think the biggest thing is about, don't be afraid to speak up. There's no wrong question, or you don't. People will appreciate you speaking up in a meeting, and showing your voice. But I also think in terms of an inclusive and diverse leadership approach, would be to try and engage those people in a different way as well. So as I was talking to you about the different colors
yes,
you
yeah,
could be, you might want to address someone in your team that might be more introverted and doesn't like speaking up. You can try and bring them into the conversation instead. So I
yeah.
think there's certain leadership skills there that are important, to actually try and develop and actually understand your teams and your peers, and how you can better communicate with them as well.
That's kind of a slightly different area, isn't it? Because in order to become a good marketer, you equally
Yeah,
have to develop yourselves as a
yeah,
leader, as a
yeah,
manager,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and treat both of those requirements equally, I guess.
Yeah, so I think I've had that progression. So I started very, entry level role at Domestic in General, and now I'm, looking after heading up at CMO level pretty much. So I've had to do that through, but it's all through my own achievements.
Yeah,
I've actually had good successes that I've been promoted,
yeah,
and then I've been headhunted, and
yeah,
so it is about, and also try and shout about your successes as well.
yeah.
Don't hide behind anything. Actually put it out there how well you're doing, and make sure you have those conversations with your line manager about you getting to the next stage, and how to do that.
Fabulous. So, last question. What is one marketing myth that needs to be debunked?
Well, you said the one that about marketing is the colouring in department.
Yes.
Of course, it's not the colouring in department. Every bit of information that we've been talking about today shows it's not the colouring in department.
Yeah, so that would be your answer.
But there is another one as well. With a
Okay.
good product, you don't need marketing.
Right. Okay.
I think we all know that we need marketing. So yeah, I've heard that one before as well. But
Yeah.
that's something you do need marketing to grow.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%.
So there's this sort of famous story of what was around for years of Elon Musk saying that with Tesla he never did any
Yes, I was
marketing.
about to use that one.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because they suddenly had to cut their prices.
Yeah. Which is one of the fundamental components of
Yeah,
marketing strategy.
exactly. But if you do brand building,
Yeah.
you can maintain premium pricing.
Yeah.
But then if you so if you let that go, so that's actually quite an interesting case study, isn't
Yeah.
it? So
Super. Shakeela, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today to The Growth Engine. If you enjoyed this episode and like to hear more, please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, and follow us on LinkedIn for regular updates, or on hubagency.co.uk. Thank you, and see you next time.